So we have a major update this time around. We now have a mining skill and the ability to smelt ores in a furnace. So very exciting stuff. I went into these past couple of weeks thinking that it would be pretty straightforward, the same thing as usual, just, making assets, making menus. But actually it was fairly challenging. Making the first game system that runs in the background and requires building on top of other things was fairly challenging and took a lot longer than I expected. I'm really glad that I built out the inventory system earlier because otherwise it would be very challenging and demoralizing to have to build out these things at the same time. I did have to do a little bit, but not as much as I would have had to. But anyway, let's first take a look at what I've built, starting with the mining skill, and then at the end I'll circle back to some of the reflections that I had these past couple of weeks. So here we are in town, and I've just added a portal to the mining map. So now we're in the mining map. We have a bunch of mining points, the furnace, and a new platform style as well, which is very exciting. In the future, I'll add an NPC here so the player can be introduced to the mining skill. But even though we don't have the NPC yet, I have created the mining skill and already built out the skill system so that the player can switch between different skills and equip a pickaxe that it doesn't technically have in the inventory right now. Oh, actually, I also worked on this past sprint, this equipment view. Essentially, you'll have your player there eventually, and you'll have a bunch of tools that you can equip. So eventually the pickaxe will go here, and this will have a bunch of foods and potions and armor, and you'll be able to view your skills. So I'm looking forward to building that out. Yeah, let's move on. Clicking on one of these mining points will navigate us to the closest point and the player will start mining. And as promised, there are mining sounds as well. Player has various stats like mining speed, mining efficiency, multi-ore drop chance, and several other things that all come together to change how effective the player is at mining. And of course, the pickaxe and leveling up the skill should also help improve the chances of successfully mining an ore. Right now, the chance is like 33% or something like that, so it's not always going to drop. But I guess that's part of the fun. You have something to work towards, right? Each mining point has a set number of ores that it can drop before it's completely depleted and has to regenerate again. In this round, I've also implemented an auto mode, which lets you have the player automatically go to each mining point as they get depleted so that you can just continuously mine. The auto mode is not visible in the user interface yet, but I will make it visible soon. So let's collect these ores and let's go to the furnace. So if we click on the furnace, it will launch the furnace menu alongside the inventory, and each row here represents a smelting job. So it will take in some ores and some coal and it will produce a bar. So let's just look at the upgrades. I think that's a good illustration. Essentially, we can buy more jobs so we can smelt more things at once. Right now it's free. So now we're going to put the ores into the furnace. These buttons actually work, so that's clearly a bug. I will fix that. But yeah, you can see here it's progressing and it does take some time. So when I have the mining NPC, the NPC will give the player some coal to speed up the process. But for now, I just have it smelting just ores, no coal, and it's fairly slow, but it's okay. So cool, we see that it's given us a bar. I'm going to get more ores, so I want to illustrate how it shows two different progresses. Two different types of job progresses or something like that. You can see here we have a cute little furnace with its flames and a little bit of smoke coming out, which is very exciting to me. I think it's super cute and I'm happy with how this turned out. Cool, so we have more ore and we're going to put it into this one. And now we can see we have a slightly faster smelting job, which is very cool. And we have two different flames going here. And we can also retrieve bars like this. Part of the reason why the furnace took so long is because it extends a lot from the inventory system and it produces a lot of new constraints like what kind of items can go in each slot, how many items can go in each slot, is the item still there because the job is progressing, and it also needs to run in the background, which adds a new layer of complexity because you want to make sure that the menu is updating, that if the player comes back from being AFK, that we have their progress, and so on. I thought the furnace would take 1.5 hours to implement initially, but it ended up taking 12 hours. That is 8 times longer. Very brutal. So wrapping up now, as I was talking about earlier, these past couple of weeks have been pretty shaky productivity-wise. I was traveling for a couple of weeks and then I think I got, that sickness where you're actually physically exhausted, and I was out literally for like 4 days. I would just be sleeping all day, which is pretty intense. Yeah, naturally I wasn't able to work as much as I wanted to. And I think 1, the stress of being behind, 2, the furnace system taking much longer than expected, and 3, just the natural reflections while traveling everything all came together to make me realize that, oh, like, hey, self-employment is actually challenging, and so is game development. And I think sometimes I forget that. I think that could be a good thing as well, because let's say I felt like I'm about to do this brutal challenge every day, then it would be a lot hard to get started. I think sometimes it's nice to just, I don't know, mindlessly go into it. But yeah, it was definitely a reminder that what I'm doing is challenging. I need to persevere sometimes. And perhaps trying to remember that it is challenging will make it feel less defeating when issues naturally occur. But with all that being said, I want to make sure that throughout this process, I'm working as sustainably and mentally healthily as possible. So I will take into consideration the lessons that I've learned from the furnace system being much more complex and reserve some time to make sure that I'm working on the math and the background functionality of the game systems going forward. And within the span of a couple of weeks, I don't want to work too many additional hours just because there were some unforeseen issues. Of course, I'm building this kind of game out for the first time, and there's going to be things I didn't know I needed to build out naturally, right? So I'm trying to take it as not being behind and rather looking at it as something that I would have to do eventually anyway, and I'm just discovering it now because that's probably what it is in reality, right? And I think more importantly, I don't want to take shortcuts in trying to deliver something that I said I would do in the span of 2 weeks and then leave swaths of unimplemented functionality for me to work on later on. It's going to be kind of hard to have pride in what I'm building if there's a bunch of bugs and things that aren't implemented, so it's not actually doing what it says that it should do. I think limiting the bugginess and the gaps in functionality within reason can help build the momentum as well, because I think that there's a lot of mental overhead in remembering which things I can't implement yet. I just have to put it to do, and then storing all those things in my head and the burden of like, oh, I haven't done this yet, all of those kind of things add up and make it harder to face each task. In these upcoming weeks, I'm going to do a bit more work on the furnace system and the inventory system to flesh it out further. But then going back to the master plan of being able to craft jellies and use those jellies to unlock the initial town's NPCs, here's what the progress looks like right now. So yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff. In the next update, there should be 3 new game systems. There's only 1 in this update, and it was very mentally taxing, so I'm hoping that the next couple of weeks won't be now that I have this experience. We'll have the crafting system, a storage system, and the beginnings of an oven system. Cool, that's it for now. Meet again in 2 weeks if you want to see the next round of progress. And as usual, you can leave feedback if you want to.